Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Dani Standring on the line. Say hello, Dani.
Hey, good
And
afternoon, good morning.
and if you're not familiar with Dani, you may be familiar with her TikToks. They're all over social media as far as I'm concerned. Like whether it's on TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or wherever, I see it everywhere. Um, and I think it's hilarious and great and super cool. And we actually
Oh,
met briefly at Gamma. I didn't
hmm
recognize you at first because you had a mask, which is appropriate.
yep.
But then I was like, oh, you make all this cool stuff, and I thought it'd be awesome to chat with you about it because that's a whole aspect of content creation that I have very little insight into. But before we get to that, like, what? Tell us a little bit about your journey into gaming. Like, when did you start? What games? How did you get there? And then we'll transition to the content.
Sure. And to be fair, at Gamma, yes, I was wearing a mask, but I'd also just decided to chop off all of my hair and dye it a weird color the day before. So it was like a completely different person from what people are used to seeing on the internet. So you weren't the only one that were like, "Is that Danny?" I'm like, yes, that was me.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
It was also weird at Gamma that it was the first show I'd been to in 2 or 3 years, and in 2 or 3 years, most people change a lot, one way or the
yes.
other. And so, like, I was all sorts of people I didn't recognize. They're like, "I'm your brother," but
We're related.
yeah, we're related. But anyway, so your journey into games.
So gaming started probably like all good teenagers wanted to get into gaming, except it was of the PC type. And I was very heavily into World of Warcraft and just World of Warcraft.
So
And
I
then
mean, Horde or Alliance. So hold on a second.
it Alliance.
This interview is over. It's over.
I always say, and then people are like, really? I'm like, yes, I was a human warlock. I'm still a human warlock, and I stand by that. There's a lot of pride there, okay? So I came in right at the beginning of Lich King, and that just kind of like in the world of video games like blew my mind. Because even before that, I wasn't super into gaming. I play like standard stuff, but like World of Warcraft was like the first game that like brought me into the world, and I did a lot of like League of Legends and all that good stuff.
So
So
who'd you main in League of Legends? Hold on a second. This is important content.
main was Morgana and
Morgana.
Misfortune. And then I started like diving into more of the melee. So then I had Fiora, and ultimately it always came down to Morgana. I was mid lane with her. I play support with her. I would AD carry with her.
She's
Like
big in jungle right now. Go ahead.
I, I actually tried playing again recently, and I don't know if I'm just like getting too old, but I was like not bored, but I was like, all right, this is taking forever. I have people yelling at me because apparently I suck, and at the time I did suck because I hadn't played like 5 years.
Yeah,
I think I'm good.
it's all right to int, but the yeah. So the Warlock Morgana, there's a little through line there.
I'm
Um,
also playing a sorcerer in D&D right now, so there's a lot of overlap here with my gameplay styles.
all right. So you're playing video games, right?
Yep.
PC games. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Then what happens?
What happens is, see, what had happened was we were at PAX East 2012. We were there. I was actually dressed up as Garen from League of Legends. And we were in a
Like
queue
base skin,
line,
or which skin were you dressed
base
up as?
skin, like
Okay.
OG Garen. And we have a friend that was with us. We were waiting in the queue line to get in. We had just gotten our swag bags. And that year, they had given out like mono-colored magic decks in the swag bag. And he looked at us and he was like, "Hey, do you want to learn how to play Magic?" And we didn't know how much of a nerd he was when it came to Magic. Like, the more we started talking about it, like, he had been to like worldwide competitions for Magic. And I was like, I don't want to learn Magic. Like, that's for real nerds. That's for like the real dorky people, as I'm standing there in a cosplay to go into a video game
There's
convention.
all
Well, anyway,
sorts. There's all spectrum of fans.
so we learned how to play Magic, and then that was it. That was like game over for us. Like, we were fully into it. I think that whole weekend we went and bought like one of those like used boxes of Magic cards for like $10 with like thousands of cards in it, and learned how to play. And we were solidly into Magic for like a year. But it was just, when I say we, I mean like me and my husband. That's all we did. But then it got to
Fortunately,
the
it's good with two players.
it's fantastic with two players, but it got really heated a lot. It became very competitive between us. We tried to bring friends in. They didn't want to play with us because we were so competitive. Like we were spending too much money building decks just to get angry at each other. So we started looking outside of the scope of Magic. Like we were introduced to Munchkin, and then the one that really did us in was Star Realms and Ascension. And that was like the rainbow bridge from
I mean,
Magic into like the tabletop
that's a
world.
much better transitional game than Munchkin for a Magic player, I think.
That was one of the first games I learned, and I loved it at first, but then we started playing with like round groups of people, and then like I ended the game ended in so many tears so many times. It wasn't good. And Apples to Apples was another one, Ticket to
Sure,
Ride, Small
sure.
World, but the ones that really did it was Star Realms and Ascension, and it was the beginning of the end. That was it. So it was roughly almost like 9, 10 years ago. It was the transition from video games, which I still play a ton of, but it's not my focus, into tabletop.
All right, so you transition into a wonderful story. I think that probably lines up with quite a few folks in terms
Yeah.
of uh, a deep dive from Magic and then transitioning over. Um, so okay, then how did the content creation start? Right, so you're playing games with your husband's, that pretty cool, and then you're like, what happens?
I had a kid. Well, no, actually, I've always had a kid. I have an older daughter. She's almost a high schooler now. Oof. But I had my youngest almost 4 years ago now, and I was home with the girls, and I was like at this like new phase of my life where I was trying to figure out like who am I? Do I have any friends? Not really. Um,
You have
and I was
Magic.
I have magic. I have cloaks. Like I have my internet friends. And I was sitting on the couch and just scrolling TikTok like any other person does on the couch. And I was like, I'm gonna make a video. Like, why not? And I was playing Gloomhaven. I didn't even talk about it. I just like put some video together with like some text overlay, and people just started talking to me about things. And then I made a joke about Kickstarter and how it's destroying my bank account. And people thought it was funny. And I think at the time there was maybe only like one or two other folks on TikTok doing like similar, like short form funny stuff. And I was like, I want to keep doing this. I like doing this. I like the interaction. I like the community of people here. And again, another beginning of the end, the new phase 3 of life, or 5 or 10, whatever phase I was on. It just slowly turned into, I really like doing this. And it was also like a hobby I had on my own, because what my husband and I do is literally everything together, like board games, video games, hiking, like we play disc golf together. We just spend every waking moment together. And this was kind of like a way for me to like have my own thing and be able to express myself in a way that I am just an independent person outside of my marriage, which I'm not digging on at all.
No,
But
I
when
get
you've
it.
been with someone for 14 years, I'm like, hey, this is me. I'm back.
Well, it's funny. I can relate to that in a slightly different way, which was for me nothing to do with my wife, but I spend all my time on doing things creatively with teams and groups of people, making games, and like you always have to rely on and work with other people to make stuff, because I don't have any demonstrable skill at all. It's all working with other people. But the so for me, getting into doing the YouTube Gaming with Edo stuff was like, oh, I don't need anybody. Like I
This is
can do
just
this on my
me.
own. I don't need to like. Is it just me? My schedule. I don't have to like motivate anyone else. Like it's just,
Hmm.
and so like there was something very freeing in being able to do that. So but your stuff is very funny, right? Like it's not like I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's a product of like the funny stuff doing better, and that's why I see it, or not. Like I don't know how much the overlords are presenting me your funny side, but when I
Yeah.
see almost all of your stuff, it's all witty and smart and funny and topical, and so like that doesn't feel like something that just pops out suddenly to me. Like,
No.
were you a funny? Like, have you always been funny, or were you like, did you find your funny in that very moment post your second kid, or like what?
So my coming of new mom age. So I talk about this with, and I talk about Todd all the time. Like I said, we're attached at the hip. Like it's annoying. But I think we've always lived in this like bubble where he is probably more funny than I am. But we just like bounce off each other all the time. And like I feel bad for people who play games with us because like we take our games seriously, but the wit goes back and forth so strong at all times between us. And I think just being with this other person who matches that wit has just escalated us into like an oblivion. And so like when I present him with my material, I'm like, is this funny enough? Is this even good? And he's like, babe, like stop. Like that's just you personally, like you're just a funny person. Like he always tells me, get over yourself. You're funny. So I think that's just my personality that comes through. And that has been something that I've always tried to do with my content is just express who, like, this is me. Like what you see in my videos is what you're going to get in real life. Me talking to you right now, me at work, like that's just it. And I'm pretty convinced that I'm like the personality hire at work. I don't know if they actually hired me for my skill. I think it's like they hired me to be like the people person that brings the escalation of like high tension down. But that was a realization in the past year.
Okay. So I have some other questions, but let's just follow that thread for a second. So you're making this content. It's cool. It's fun. You still have a full-time job, I presume, as well, mm-hmm. Which you're mentioning. What do you do outside of make videos?
I do, and I won't bore you with it because it is incredibly boring.
I don't know. So nothing's boring. Go ahead.
It's not the funnest thing, but it's great. It pays.
But that's why you're there to make it fun, as you were just saying.
Yeah, the personality hire here. So I actually work for a pharmaceutical company. I work in CMC strategy where I deal with drugs post-commercialization, making sure that drugs are still distributed across the world. Anytime we have a process change or we're trying to, shift things but still keep the product in the market. That's where I come in to make sure, we keep the health authorities happy and, do our due diligence, making sure like what we're providing to the patient is efficient and safe. And that's it. That I could go into it more, but it is vastly different from what I do on the internet.
And would you say that's predominantly in the context of what you do, spreadsheet type work and calls and emails, or is it more personal, or is it more science-based? Like where do you fit into that?
We bridge the gap between the science and the scientific reports. So I work directly with like labs and the big brain people who like could basically cure cancer right now. I take that information, I put it into nice spreadsheets and reports and dossiers, and then I do the presenting to the people who give you the thumbs up for selling those drugs. So we're kind of like the liaison between the science side and the product side, what people get out in the real world.
But when you say do some of the presenting, you mean actually
Mm-hmm.
like presenting it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a connection there. I mean, it's not quite being on camera, but I guess probably is right now. But
there's a huge connection, and this is definitely going to go to like RPGs and D&D, and being able to speak in front of my peers and tell stories in a way that is like concise and to the point has totally helped my career in a positive way. Like I can get up and give a presentation in front of forums and not think twice of it. And that is only like developed over the past like 5-10 years. Whereas before I'd be like, I couldn't imagine speaking in front of people, which is weird because like what I did as a teenager, I was very loud, boisterous, and I'd always be talking in front of people. But now more so, like I can just get in front of a camera and talk to whoever. Like I can get up and teach a game to anyone, and then I can also get up and like speak to some very important people in my industry and, not think twice of it. So the overlap there has been hugely beneficial.
And has there, out of curiosity, and again, I have some other questions about the content, but like, has there been any crossover where you've been presenting, you're at work, and someone's like, "Hey, didn't I just see your like TikTok thing?" Or
no,
not yet.
So that has been kind of my goal, is to like keep these two lives very separate. I don't think anyone at work knows that I do this. Maybe one person does because we're pretty close outside of work too. But my goal is to make this completely.
You might want to have a strategy, a post-reveal strategy.
Surprise.
So okay. So here's my next question, because I see a lot of the short form content. I'm certainly familiar with all sorts of the software in different ways, but I look at something like, it's one thing that you started in earlier in this narrative. You started with, I just started recording myself playing Gloom, and I threw some text over it, right? Or I did this. Mm-hmm. Gloomhaven, or was it Gloom?
Gloomhaven.
Gloomhaven. No, that's a big game. Actually, I went from Magic to Gloom, but Gloomhaven's probably more popular these days. And so my question is, but now you're like, other content is like, I think pretty darn complex, right? Like, some of it, it's all short, but like joking over the Ticket to Ride moment when you take the spot, or like another one. I don't know which game it was, whether it was Bang or Liar Dice or whatever, but like putting the things in and then cutting to the jackass scene,
Yeah, it was
like
Zombie Dice.
that. That's crafted content, right? You got to be like, I'm going to make this joke, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to splice in this photo. Like it doesn't. It's not just being funny in the moment, right? Like it includes that, but it's certainly not like you can't do that kind of editing without having a plan. I think
A vision.
but like how can you like take me through that part of like that process? Like, I guess it's two things. One, how, like, was it just like a natural trying to one-upmanship what you did the last time to get there? And then once you got there, like, when you make a new video that has some of these elements in them, like, what's your process?
So I think it goes back to what exactly you were saying. Like you have to have like some sort of idea of what you want it to look like, or like what you're trying to get across. A lot of times I'm just driving in the car and it will be a thought that comes into my head and be like, ha, that'd be pretty funny. But I'd sit on it. Like I'll stew on it and I'll think about exactly how I want to see it. And like I always have like these like inner monologues going in my head about like visually, like how would that be funny to me? And that's pretty much it. And I try and explain it all the time. And if I see it, I want to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, like I'll go out of my way to like, do research. Like, how do I splice these things together? How do I like make this dream come alive? Like, how can I make this happen? So over the past 2.5 years of like me thinking of things I want to put together has slowly just like evolved like my style and how I make content, which then also like helps me come up with more creative ideas. Like once I figure out how to do something, I'm like, oh man, like this opens up a bunch of doors. I can start doing this and this. So it's just been like compounding on each other, like research on how to like actually edit things, and then bring in some of the dumb ideas that it's not only me. Like I am not the only person figuring, like, I mean, I'm coming up with these ideas. Again, it's the other man I'm married to. Like he'll come up to me and be like, babe, I had a thought, like, what if you did this? And he won't necessarily like tell me like how I should do it, but he'll give you like the baseline narrative of what it is. I'm like, that'd be pretty funny. Let's try and put it together. So it's really, that's it. Like it has just been the progression of figuring out how to edit videos, slap them together, mixed with, oh, once I learn how to do that, then I can start doing this. So it's just been layers and layers. And it made me realize that's something I really like to do. Like I've always lived in a very like technical scientific world where there's not a ton of creativity. So like for me to go and do this, now I can't draw or do anything creative on that end, but I can slap together some videos and make it look very presentable. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction.
I also think people often maybe don't understand how precise video editing is, in terms of, sitting there and being like, no, that cut too soon. Millisecond. Oh, the audio didn't hit. I want it to land right when that happens. It's very, once you get down into the weeds. I mean, again, editing the way that you have with lots of back and forth and camera cuts and moment and timing. It's all, there's so much timing in it, right?
And I'm such a stickler for timing.
No, I think if you do that content, I don't think people understand that part of it really. If you haven't done it, if you haven't been like, oh, that's what it's like.
And I feel like timing plays into a lot of like getting the story across, or the comedic, like the comedy part of it. Like comedic timing is a thing. And I didn't realize how much of a thing it was until I started editing my videos and making sure like things hit at the right time. And I've become obsessive with timing in my videos, right down to like music and visuals. And it is like, it's kind of been my bane, is realizing like I can let go a little bit. Like there's a little bit of budging room there, but for the most part, I'm like, no, this needs to be perfect. You should see when I expand my videos to like get like the actual millisecond. You're not kidding. Like I'm going out to like the 4th digit of a second to make sure it like hits just right. It's a problem.
No. I mean, I think it's part of the process. Okay, but let's get even more specific for a moment than the milliseconds. you can do a lot of this stuff on phones, but and oftentimes for getting the timing things and the swapping, like the phone software is getting to an okay point for certain content, but like seems like it's impossible for some of this stuff. So I assume you're making your videos on a PC and then say you're doing it. So how do you? Man, that seems like it's just a lot of work. I guess maybe it's easier. I can't.
So because I've never done it any other way. Like that's how I've taught myself. So I do have a combination of my phone and my iPad. I've kind of lived in this like Apple ecosystem now,
Sure.
and I never was. So again, like this was a learning curve for myself. So I use 4 different apps, each one, greatly beneficial over the other one in certain areas. So like from like conception to like the very end of the final produced video, it will go through the gambit of 4 different apps to
Those
get it
4 apps
exactly.
being
Splice, CapCut, Video Leap, and what's the last one called?
so I guess
I remember.
okay, but you're not
Icon.
using the TikTok video suite to do all this.
No, but I say that hesitantly now because as I'm still learning the algorithm of TikTok, and if anyone has figured it out, please come find me. They like it when you use their in-app features. So I'm starting to like integrate maybe some text into my videos that is done in the TikTok app, or some stickers, or like some sort of filter. Like TikTok hates it when you just take a video, put it in their system, and hit post. They like you to take time in the app and use the features that they have available to you. And I've noticed this in how they push out your video. So like a video, I could put 2 identical ones in, all edited in a third-party app, post it, and might do okay. If I take a little bit more time and, do some fun, frilly things in the TikTok app and post it, it does better. And I've been testing the waters with this over the past few months. They just like you using their stuff.
Oh, for sure, right? Because I mean, I've been in conversations separately with some of these companies unrelated to games, but ultimately, it's not only using the app; it's becoming a creation destination, right? Like, if you just make a video and you put it on 5 different platforms, right? Like, you're not really investing in
Their
their
platform.
platform versus Reels or whatever other competitive platforms there are. So I think that is a real thing. I mean, not exactly the same, but it was always an interesting conversation with folks about having ads on YouTube videos, right? Ultimately, there's like sort of 2 ways to think about it. One sort of like, oh, well, you're just trying to make money. The reality is you're not making any money off of it. But actually, YouTube likes promoting and growing videos that have ads on because it makes money, right? So like it's also part of discovery and growth in terms of a consideration point. So there's always different factors, but I suspect you can do what you're doing, which is a mixture of some original base and then adding it on. But you're using these apps. You've got your iPad, your phone, all Apple devices, making things happening. How is your, and I
Posture,
admit,
terrible. Like this.
yeah, no, you must clearly have a posture problem. No, actually, I guess, do you use a standing desk with a phone?
No, and I need to. I just saw you zip yours up and down, and I was like, man, I've been working from home and doing this for like 3 years. Why have I not invested in a
Oh,
standing desk yet?
it really is. I mean, they were pretty hard to, like, there was a period where they were getting sold out because everyone was at home. But, I don't know, for like a single one that's like for one person, I want to say it was $300 or $400, but you're at it every day. It's sort of like, buying a
That's worth
mattress
it.
and being like, you're going to have it for a decade. Like, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's a little, but, yeah, no, and you're standing and you'll feel better and you'll notice, like, I don't know if you go to chiropractics at all or anything like that, but like there's just things that develop over time from, being in the same position constantly. But
I need that in my life.
it's an internet purchase away. I mean, like, they'll just deliver it to your door. I don't, regarding, okay, so understanding you make your content. The next question, and I don't have this mapped out, but you must know it because of course you do. Like, how has your channel's trajectory grown? Like, when did you start? Was it like a slow ramp? Has it picked up suddenly? Like, sort of, How's it looked for you in on TikTok?
It goes in phases. So the first year, honestly, I didn't know where this was going to go, and I never expected it to become this. It was honestly just fun to do, and again, it was like an outlet for me to like have my own self. I think it was a year into it is when I realized like, oh, I can actually do this and make something out of it, and get new information about games to the general public. And so I think once I started taking it more seriously, and when I started doing the research and I started reaching out to companies like, hey, like, do you have anything new coming up that I can talk about? I would really like to do that. That was about the 1 year mark is when I started to see more growth. And with any like, I feel like everyone's journey has that point where they're like, you're kind of at a standstill, you feel stale, you're like, what do I need to do to like, continue the growth? I think I definitely hit that about a year and a half, 2 years in. And that's when I decided to expand like outside of TikTok. I started like, I went on Instagram, and then I popped on Twitter, and then I reluctantly joined Facebook recently, and, kind of making the rounds amongst all social media and just being like present in the comments and engaging in comments. So I think once I, made the full commitment from this is just kind of fun to like, oh no, I want to make this like not even a side hustle. I don't want to call it that. That feels gross. Let's not call it that. I want to make this something, is when I started seeing the growth. And that was also like, I want to see the growth, but at the same time, like I need to tell myself it's not all about the growth. You're just having fun. So it's the nice balance of like making sure I'm still doing it for the right reasons, but also like getting satisfaction in seeing the growth. So I feel like that's a double-edged sword right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we all get our dopamine from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting in terms of scaling and going to different platforms. As you're growing as a channel and thinking about it, like on one hand, I feel like one thing that's interesting about TikTok is it's very TikTok / some of those other newer brand social networks, newer like in the last decade, but they, the audience that its core cross section is different than a core cross section of Facebook, and different than a core cross section of Twitter or whatever, right? And where those cross sections intersect with different parts of the industry, and like different parts of gamers, people who play games, and then also different parts of where people are like, no, creators interact, and publishers, where are publishers sitting, and I think expanding it, having that range allows you to hit different audiences, both in terms of the people who are consuming your content as just consumers, but also the people who see your content as publishers and other people who are sort of wanting to talk to those consumers, right?
And you couldn't be more right in that statement. So with TikTok, my founding there, I'm very much a family person. I love playing games with my family. I love talking about playing games with my family. And I know when I talk about family games on TikTok, it goes over superbly. That party games, light games, the stuff that just the general public wants to see. But I do love me a good hearty game. But the first video I made was about Gloomhaven. I did a whole series on Too Many Bones. Like, I love talking about like the thick gamers game, but that doesn't necessarily do great on TikTok. I do have an audience there that loves hearing about it, but I can almost guarantee when I talk about a beefy game there, it's probably not going to be my hit video. But if I bring that video over to Twitter, if I bring that over to Facebook, people love it there. Like, there is a distinct audience on each platform. And I'll always post across all platforms because I have an audience in each one. But I can almost guarantee I will know when I talk about a specific game, I know which platform it will do really well on. So I like to keep like the breadth of what I talk about pretty wide. But also keep the expectation like it's not going to be a hit on every platform for that reason, because there's a different audience on each one.
Cool. And do you use any tools to support the content release strategy? Like there's some like, I want to call it Hoot Deck. I don't remember what these things are called anymore. But like there's different or do you just manually go into each and post it every time?
I manually do it.
Yeah, all right.
I don't know. I don't know any other way. Teach me the ways. Like I'm here to
No,
learn
no.
like all
Oh,
tools.
I mean, just to be cool, there absolutely are ways. Like you are wasting your own time.
I
Um,
love it.
uh,
It's my favorite thing to do.
yeah, I mean, if you just there's all sorts of content creation sharing tools that will you have to aggregate and post your content. You can set schedules. Um,
Mhm.
what I will say is, you don't want to make it fire and forget. I think like the comment and the engagement's important, but like as far as at least the process of like going to each one and doing each step of it, that you can absolutely roll out and have it do it, and then you can go through and follow up on them. But there's all sorts of tools for that. So I mean, I just feel I'm a little dated in that like I haven't used those tools in a while, but I'm 100% sure they exist. Um, as are
Oh no.
people who will edit your videos for you, but I don't think that's something you'd be interested in at this time.
Well, and I'm also I like the editing process.
Right,
I like
exactly.
doing. I like having my art style. But also going back to what I was saying before about like TikTok likes it when you use their tools, and I'm noticing Reels likes it when you use their tools. So I find like one of those services that would help like automate posting kind of would take away from that. And I'm not in it for the numbers. I'm not in it for the growth. I know when I work with publishers, they like to see the numbers because my videos are getting out there to more people. But like I'm in it to give like the best quality content. That's really what it is for me. It's quality over quantity. So if I were to like find a tool that would like mass post for me, I feel like it would take away from those like personal touches I put on TikTok and the personal touches on Instagram. And I even start personalizing on Facebook too. So you get a little piece of me with each post, and I try to make it a little bit more exciting on, well, not more exciting, a little different across each one, just so the people who are like, yeah, I already saw this on Twitter to know you got something new for me. I try to keep it fresh, try to keep it alive.
Well, certainly a strong logic there. Um, yeah, I think it's super interesting. Like, and my impression from talking to you now is that in terms of sort of what you see next and coming, it sounds like you're mostly just playing games and making videos that you think are funny that you enjoy to make for the fun of doing it, and like it doesn't sound like a gigantic siege of plan to like take over the world perspective, but more just continue to make stuff and have the outlet perspective.
And I think it's probably maybe a little bit more of the take over the world than
Oh,
maybe
you're
I'm
just not admitting
alluding
it.
to. No, and I, because I try to be realistic with things. I'm very comfortable in my full-time job, but would it be nice to do this as like a career? Hell yeah. Would I like to, focus on board games and live out my best life? Absolutely. But also, like, I'm not trying to do that tomorrow. So for me, it is mostly, getting good in my craft. And I have a perfectionist problem where I need to be the best I can be at it. So, right, it's still a learning experience for me and making the connection. So, like speaking with you, I feel like this is going to be a very valuable connection, and getting to know the people in the industry and just making sure my name is out there in a genuine way. Like, I'm not just someone who showed up and I'm knocking on your front door, like, hey, I'm here. What can you do for me? Like, I want to build a rapport with people to a point where, 5 years down the line, like I am comfortable in doing this is potentially a full-time thing. So there's both sides to it. Yes, it's just for fun, but also maybe who knows? I mean, who knows? When the kids are older, I can just kind of like hang out
Oh,
and talk about board games.
I think I mean, I pencil. I mean, this is my like the side hustle to the side hustle to the side, but certainly that for parents, for the parents out there and listening, I don't know how large that is for my audience, but for the parents out there, right, like it's like, oh yeah, well this might work after both of my kids are in college. Like once they're
Yeah.
gone and I don't have, then maybe it's if I can keep it around until then maybe it'll be something that can take on full time. Thanks so much for I mean, I hope you succeed in that way. And I also having know some people who are in the comedy circuit, I guess, in comedy. That's also not a short track for a lot of folks. I mean, like there's the new age fast tracks, but like just generally in terms of like working on it year over year, getting really good. It's really an art that you develop over time, right? So learning continuing to develop your comedic voice, your natural voice, but continuing to figure that out, then figuring out how to infuse video with it, right? Like all the editing and tools learning, and then the platforms, right? That takes, you can always have that hit, but otherwise it just takes work, right?
It's just figuring out, just figuring out what you like. To boil it all down to one simple thing, like, what do you like and what do you like presenting, and like finding yourself in that and showing it to the world. So yeah, that's
I'll take that as an end. So thank you so much for being on. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for the folks who have watched as well.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Bye.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.